Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Cisco SecureX, the power of the browser plugin. Security Onion, you've got a tool here, provides tremendous value. You've got some alerts. You start drilling into them. But imagine if I can further enrich this with SecureX. But maybe there's no direct integration. Well, that's where the plugin comes in. So you can see here I've got some good information. I see domains and IP addresses, but I don't want to copy and paste and move them into SecureX. I want to be able to scrape them, and that's where the plugin comes in, as well as many other things. And you can see there's a domain there that looks like Microsoft, but it's not, and I could take action right from here without actually drilling any further. I can also drill down into the event, and now the page has more information. And in that message, for example, that could reference a SHA-256, other domains. So I can go ahead and now scrape it and see the difference here. I've got a lot more information here. I'm going to go ahead and click that domain there that looks suspicious, and maybe the IP address of the host that's internal to my organization. The URL, that's just a reference within the actual page itself. And look at that. Very quickly, I see that domain, and it's flagged as malicious. But look at that target. That's not the 70, right? It's now showing me that there was an endpoint that had endpoint amp installed on it that actually went to that domain. Now, what I did there was I added that endpoint to the investigation. And look what I see now. A whole bunch more data. Now, it might be in reference to that domain, or it may not be directly. But what I do know is that 192.168.255.141 talked to that malicious domain, and now it's also talking or has seen this malicious SHA. And I could drag this around, take action from it, look for additional insight. I can do all kinds of stuff right from this pane of glass. I don't need to log into a different tool to execute against that. Now, this is showing a casebook, but what I want to show you is Orbital. So I've got this endpoint. The .70 didn't show up, and the reason why we don't see the .70 maybe is because it's outside of maybe the protection mechanisms that we have in place. But I can very quickly come into Orbital, look for a host, and go ahead and do a forensic scan. Right from there, or even more easily, I can come here, look at the host name, and look at all the actions I can take here. Go ahead and click that forensic snapshot, and magic starts to happen. It's collecting the data. I could have also isolated the host. Now, let's jump back in here. We can see within Orbital, we can see our active jobs and the stuff that's been queried and connected hosts. I'm going to pivot right into it to look at that forensic snapshot. So now I can look at, 256 hashes running on the machine, map drives, interface names, and associated IPs. Now what's interesting is as I'm going through this, I can take action. You can see that drop down arrow beside the IP address. I can take action from that. It's also telling me, if it's aware of it, whether or not the SHA is bad. So if it's green, that means it's a known clean SHA, 256. If it's red, it's indicating it is malicious. I can see PowerShell history, operating systems, the current logged in user, Windows executables. This was all driven initially from that initial investigation in Security Onion. I've got security accounts here. I've got listening ports, startup items. Again, I can go through this entire list and get information that's going to be meaningful and helpful during my incident. As I continue, you can see there's processes. Again, you can see some IPs that are, in this case, ours, and then what they're talking to, user groups on the machine, right? So we saw earlier that user administrator. Maybe this machine administrator shouldn't be logged on. I see temporary directory files. I got scheduled tasks. And then I can come into my jobs overall and have a peek of what's actually happening here. pretty cool. This was all driven with that SecureX plugin for my browser in a tool that has no concept of what SecureX is. So you can have a logging tool. It could be, Elasticsearch. It could be a competitive product to Cisco. Doesn't matter. All of them now can be further empowered with SecureX.